Hello and welcome to the fifth episode of D91 Labs Idea Series. Through this series, we intend to highlight a diverse range of ideas and innovations that aim to move the needle on financial inclusion, as well as inspire the industry to build and serve the financially and digitally underserved people of India. I am Monami Dasgupta, Head of Research at D91 Labs, and I will be hosting the discussion today. Today, we have with us Anup Pai, a long-time entrepreneur with rich experience in financial software and regulatory technology. He is currently building eSamudaay. eSamudaay is a collective aiming to empower entrepreneurs with DIY digital tools which can help enable them to run digital businesses, serve their communities, and spark grassroots local innovations. Through this interview, we'll be discussing aspects of building e-commerce 2.0, eSamuday's journey, and also touch upon the promise of open network for digital commerce, or more popularly known as ONDC. Thank you so much for joining us, Anup.
My pleasure, Monami. Thanks for having me.
Great. So, Anup, my first question to you is, as we browse through the work of eSamudaay and understand it from the media that's out there, as an organization, eSamudaay aims to empower users and strengthen the local economy through self-driven communities. This is quite analogous to the Web3 paradigm where decentralization and disintermediation are its two first principles of sorts.
Yes.
How does creating local digital entrepreneurs fit in with them? And in this context, what does Digital Swaraj really mean?
Great first question, Monami. So let's start with decentralization and disintermediation. These are technical terms that the Web3, that have existed. I want to get to the emotion of it, for us to really get a sense of what this means, right? It essentially means that at some level, all human beings want to be able to connect and build win-win collaborations for themselves through their networks with the philosophy that there is enough for all, right? So there is this feeling of community that, when you build these kind of networks. Another set of words you can use is interdependence and independence. We all know post-COVID that true independence comes from a shared interdependence, where you depend on each other, but you are truly independent. It's also quite analogous to the aatmanirbhar term that the Prime Minister brought up during the peak of the COVID lockdown. So I think these are all emotions that drive us as human beings, and the Web3 technologies enable this to happen. And while decentralization and disintermediation are technical terms used by the industry, I feel independence through interdependence is the let's say the social equivalent of the same thing. Each one of us is yearning to do that. So with that as the background, let's come to eSamudaay, right? And there it's a little, story around my own experiences with entrepreneurship from the beginning, right? In my early days, I got a chance to work in a grocery store as a shop assistant in my teens. I was mentored there by my elder cousin. This is my uncle's store. My elder cousin mentored me. He had just come back from the US after a very good career, 15 years, and now he had quit his job with a tech company in the finance department, come back to Udupi, running the shop, very, very ahead of his time. Then you think about why did Amar do it? All of us did exactly the opposite. We followed and you know how this has gone over the last 25, 30 years. Every town like Udupi, the talent has left the town, right? So, and we've gone, places. So why did Amar come back? I think it's because he had the realization that, jeene mein kuch aur hai. There is family, it's not just a race for money and so on. And I think that feeling has come for a lot of people across generations post-COVID during the lockdown. At least that's the anecdotal feeling that I get. And entrepreneurship is part of that, right? It is about doing something of your own. So that brings us to the entrepreneur model, right? For any change to happen, entrepreneurs bring about that change. We have, this local entrepreneurship movement that eSamudaay is bringing up. So what we are saying is, hey, I mean, as a country, we are digitizing at population scale, and there are so many opportunities to be gathered and addressed. So the entrepreneurs can do this, using tools that are commonly available, not something that is held by one big company or so on. It's a network of DIY tools, like you mentioned, and that in our parlance is Swaraj, right? I mean, it is about taking control of your own choices and destinies, and in the digital world. So it's a fast forward, of the Swaraj concept in the age of digital colonialism and data cartels that rule the world today.
Right. That's very interesting to know. What we've understood from the eSamudaay model, and even with through some of the articles that we've been reading, that as a company, you've aimed to focus on creating a lot of value in tier 4, 5, and 6 cities. And those are not easy cities to work with and innovate within. Especially the Udupi story has validated your ambition. What do you think are the key challenges that are prevalent in these cities that eSamudaay is attempting to solve?
So I've got this thing. I mean, over the last 6 years, I've been also studying the human body quite a bit. I mean, because of another friend of mine who's running a startup in the health world. So look, I mean, the human body is essentially made up of a lot of cells. Once the cell is healthy, it starts to help its neighborhood cells, and ecosystem develops. Right, it's a network of interdependence. Right. And when you look at these cities, tier 4, 5 cities that you mentioned, and actually that kind of social fabric is still sort of available. It's the talent, the digital talent that is missing. That's the innovation muscle that is missing. What we aim to do is essentially create the early signs of a local digital economy, which is innovation led. And Udupi has kind of validated the model. I mean, once you've set this up, the fisherman community, which is a pretty large industry in for the first time. I mean, a group of fishermen have registered a private limited company, and they're starting to build something like a DAO, which kind of brings together a cooperative kind of a movement and how they will market their fish, and so that they get better value for their produce. Right? And these are things that we think it is difficult to do, but I believe in the entrepreneurship spirit of our country. I mean, I've seen this from early days, and even now when I travel, I think the striving energy that we have in our country. That's something that, and you don't need much. You just need like a little bit of confidence, a belief in the possibility that big things are possible if you do small things one at a time, right? So,
Right.
and I think that kind of a resurgence, revitalization is starting to happen in our towns. Because eventually, I think that question of what are we doing here? I mean, where is this headed? Has come to a lot of people. I'm sure maybe you as well during the COVID lockdown. And I think that is what the challenge is. Obviously, many. I mean, we are swimming against the tide. This is essentially going against the grain, right? I mean, it lies in the face of common logic to be able to do something ground up, whereas we've always been trained to think, you build the system, then you roll it out. Here we have built a meta system which is rolled out, and then the system itself innovates at the nodes, which I think is a model that will work. And again, coming back to the Web3 world, we've known these use cases now. I mean, but unfortunately, Web3 has focused more on speculative use cases that were, either cryptocurrencies or NFTs, and so on and so forth. But if we really look at data assets, and if we can look to use Web3 techniques to do this, anything is possible. And I'm very, very confident that this model is starting to work. Right?
Right. This is very encouraging to know, Anup, the fact that you are creating platforms which are highly tech based, and they're pretty advanced in the technological world in terms of Web3 and DAO and all of those. But you're trying to connect it with the grassroots organizations that have been doing the work for forever that we know. But this will just help them scale faster, become easily more discoverable, and just have so much more benefits for them. So one of the things that I was wondering, I think in some of our older conversations, you had mentioned that eSamudaay proposes a continuity certainty through collaboration solution, which helps to create a vibrant small business network. Can you unpack this for us a little bit? How does this really enable small businesses and sellers to create value for themselves?
So again, I want to go back to the human body example. I mean, and because eventually, I think as we look in theoretical physics and others, we are a representation of what we are inside, right? I mean, outside as well. So within the body, there is a number of cells, and each one has its function. We have the brain, we have the heart, we have the organs, we have the nervous system, and so on. And there is this a cellular level collaboration that is happening. Each cell strives to be healthy, right? And when it's healthy, it tries to help its neighbors to get healthy and create a thriving ecosystem within the body, because it's a collective goal of all the cells to be healthy for as long as they can, right? Now, if you look at the externalized version of this, that shows up in human relationships as well. I mean, let's take away the current situation a little bit. I mean, I know it sounds a little utopian, but eventually, for healthy human relationships, it's all about getting the network to grow along with you, and collaborate in that way, right? Now let's take this and look at a town, a small town of, let's say, 5 lakh people from this prism. And typically, what you see is there is the head, which is typically the rich business families. People have been there forever. I mean, they've driven. I mean, they are sorted. They've got lands. They've got businesses and so on. And then there is a bunch of single business families who depend on the business for ongoing sustenance, right? I mean, there are multiple households that are doing a particular activity. Could be farming, could be trading, could be anything, and a combination of that, and they depend on that income for sustenance and growth and so on, right? So now let's look at this from a part where we create a digital version of the head, which is, I mean, because the current set of rich business families have assets, but that information to be able to take the right decisions and investment, decisions for that particular location is missing. So we introduce a new set, which is the digital entrepreneur set, right? Which is who are the guys who are now creating this network and connecting these different parts of the body that are currently disconnected, right? Because right now, just like when a body goes into disease, the head and the stomach and the organs lose, connection, right? The head drives the whole rest of the body into stress, and that's when disease starts to appear. And so essentially what we're trying to say is, hey, let's create a digital network. The smallest participant in the node, any local business family, what does that the family want? They want to take the right decision. What do I do in January that will yield me a revenue of a certain nature during the next harvest or whatever, right? So that information, if we are able to create, and if it can be locally done, it is not a top-down push-up information, but it is collectively decided, the collective wisdom of the entire organism. That I think is the goal with continuity certainty. That that guarantees continuity, provided obviously you are on the network, you're taking the decisions, you're collaborating with the digital entrepreneurs to be able to understand what you can do. Because I mean, right now, if you consider it is in a disease state, it will need to now start to collaborate more and that work its way out of it. So that's exactly where we are. And continuity certainty to that extent, I think, is the most important thing for small businesses. I mean, you want to do something that is going to yield results, and information is the I mean, is what is going to get us there.
Right. The human body analogy is very helpful to, compare with and think about it in that framework. And what I'm hearing is you need all the smaller and bigger parts to come together to make it successful, specifically for the person who's at the last mile, who's the smaller business or the trader in the, pipeline of entities. Um, so, Anup, at D91 Labs, our organization aims to understand the impact of fintech or financial services on the end financial inclusion of last mile customers. Most of the innovations tend to benefit the wealthier first, and then it comes to the lesser privileged households. What is your opinion on the potential of platforms like eSamudaay and tomorrow even maybe ONDC to digitize and financially empower small businesses and sellers?
So let's start with you know the digital network itself. Let's start with ONDC impact, right? I mean, ONDC is a common protocol. It is, I mean, if you look across the world, this is the first government created decentralization protocol, right? So now this is a technology standard or a standard communication protocol that can be adopted by everybody uniformly, right? And that kind of creates a, let's say, a network of superhighways, right? Now, the next step is for applications and collaborations in those application networks to get formed, and which is where eSamudaay and the other network participants of ONDC come about, right? So what we are doing essentially is, once we create this open network, and it is a decentralized, democratized, and distributed, a digital network. We
Hmm.
believe that local actions will get aligned towards local needs of. And typically, what we are saying is, eventually, when it comes down to that, local money moving it to local development and decision making becoming more aligned towards what the local needs. Those sort of, when you say inclusion, I think currently, we are talking about connecting people to a network or a bank account and calling it inclusion. I go a step further and we say, how can we connect people to the wealth creation system, right?
Hmm.
Not as just transmission agents, but also as wealth creation agents for themselves and their network. And that's the possibility of an open network of cooperative sort of setups, right? I mean,
Hmm.
these are people that are coming together and creating value for each other. Uh,
Hmm.
I feel uh, at this point, given the work that India has already done in the financial technology space, it's kind of like a perfect storm, right? With ONDC coming in, it's like a perfect storm of intent and opportunities that are coming up, right?
Right. Storm is the right word, Anup. I mean, there's so much going on, and we are hearing and reading about it on a daily, multiple times in a day basis, actually. And now that we're, talking about ONDC, when we understand, I mean, we are all figuring out what ONDC really is. And one of the things that we've understood, there's a large number of independent actors in ONDC. You call it network partners, supply buyers, a lot of independent, nodes that are working and trying to work together. And there's a lot of people who are trying to compare UPI or the UPI movement with ONDC. We keep seeing this on various social media platforms. Um, ONDC actually involves the actual transfer of goods from point A to point B, and a lot of people, I mean, a lot of network participants involved in the middle. And it's not similar to UPI when it comes to, where the transaction loop is ended digitally, right?
Yeah.
Uh, what do you envision the nationwide rollout of ONDC to look like? Since you've been working in this space much, much before ONDC actually was even thought about. How do you envision this rollout? And also, what do you identify as the bottlenecks that are needed to be addressed by the network? And one attached question is: do the city specific DAOs, which stands for decentralized autonomous organizations, solve this kind of issues?
Okay, so let's start with ONDC. I mean, again, just to state again, ONDC is a
Right.
protocol, right? So it is a network protocol, and I believe it is the world's first government created decentralization protocol, right? Pretty much on the lines of Ethereum and so on, potential, right? Now, the first step, I mean, I talked about decentralize, democratize, and distribute are the three things that ONDC needs to do to be able to take this movement or this great big idea to the last mile and make it completely democratized, right? I mean, which is what the original goal of ONDC is, to democratize digital commerce, right? So let's start with the first D, which is decentralized, right? So it's a protocol that has been created, just like TCP/IP was created. The gateways that and the registries that serve the protocol have to be decentralized, right? So there should be multiple gateways and registries that adhere or run the protocol, and that should be available across the country, right? And multiple institutions should be encouraged to run the gateway and the registry, right? So that's the decentralized part of it. And we have one vision of it, which is saying that there should be at least one gateway per district of India, so that that district's marketplace needs can be taken care of.
Hmm.
The second thing is distribute, right? So the ownership of the digital assets that any digitization initiative gets creates, which is what the eventual goal of digitization is, right? How do we distribute the value to the local, right? So that that is where in our world blockchain comes in, right? So the way the value of the digital assets and the digital network that is created, how do you distribute it more widely? Then the third part is democratize. How do you create participatory, a mechanism into the running of the protocol, running of the network, which is again where blockchain comes in our world. I mean, how do you create proposals which are ground up sourced and implemented? So, those three things, I mean, we've done great strides in the last few months. With these three things, now we are able to move the network to the last mile in theory. And then we need to get more and more actors into it, the network participants that we talked about. How do we get more and more application developers? How do we get more and more businesses, the DAOs that you mentioned?
Yeah.
So let's take the example of the Udupi situation. Right? So we created one platform cooperative in the Udupi region, which is called Udupi eSamudaay Digital Services. And now there are multiple DAOs that are coming under it or with it. So there is a fisheries DAO, there is a tourism DAO, there is the restaurants DAO, and so each of them are aggregating services, and all of them publish their services through the platform cooperative, which is an ONDC network participant. Right?
And
So eventually that creates more participation and rolls it out. I forgot your last question. I mean,
so I think you've already answered. So it was around the DAO issue as well, that how it solves the issues of. But what I'm hearing, Anup, is a lot of agencies now going to come for the smaller sellers and merchants that you mentioned about the fishermen or the smaller local businesses. I mean, before this, probably they found Amazon or Flipkart not the right place for them to list their services. And there was no other way of going digital apart from probably just WhatsApp messages or just one-on-one kind of peer marketing. But that doesn't really scale much beyond their network, right?
Yeah.
So when we were trying to understand ODC, I wanted to also understand that beyond access to the network, would you say that there's a level playing field for smaller businesses competing with larger incumbents because they have benefits of economies of scale? So, for instance, if I'm going to think about like a larger FMCG brand, which has a lot of brands within it, and a smaller organic or a smaller local brand. And now they have to compete on the same platform because, that's the point of ONDC. They kind of decentralize the whole process. In such a scenario, what do you think could be the limitations that a small seller might come across? So, for instance, would there be limitations related to technical capabilities or any other, cost factors that can come in the way for smaller businesses to compete with the larger businesses?
So the whole design of ONDC and eSamudaay has been with view of the smallest of the small businesses, and we have adopted the low code, no code movement very, very strongly. Believe that technology should not be a limiter for people to create digital businesses, right? You should be an owner of a digital business without having to code, right? So with that at the background, eventually, I think if you look at the small businesses competing against the larger businesses, there are two major factors. There is the cost of technology and the cost technology and R&D and the cost of marketing or brand, right? Let's take the cost of technology first, right? With ONDC and with multiple technology providers building applications on ONDC and eSamudaay, eSamudaay further leveling that field, right? Making it easier and easier for people to launch up applications. We believe that there will be massive competition from technology companies on the network, right? Which will bring down the cost of technology significantly. So the seller will have choice of the application the application itself. He will have choice what application he uses, which makes it easier for him, less time consuming for him, and so on. And there will also be better functionalities so there's choice of technology to connect to the network. So he uses this application to connect to the network. And from the network, he's got access to all the buyers on the network. And let's come to the buyer side, right? So first and foremost, the current model of technology companies charging a commission to conduct the transaction, the cost of technology will come down for these sellers. Now let's come to the brand itself for the marketing aspect, right? Now, imagine if there is a network based marketing, and eventually, it is about one style of purchase, which is where you buy directly from the producer, or where when you buy, you give value directly to the producer, or it's another thing to just buy because you're buying the product, right? So here there is a longer term relationship with the producer because you intend to purchase again, or you want to have that relationship with the consumer. And here it's a transactional kind of a relationship. You buy for the discounts and so on, right? We are very used to this model of buying, but this model of buying is something that we are promoting in the network, right? We're saying, hey, this is something that is going to yield long-term benefits for you, the consumer, because now you can customize the product. These are all software benefits. Maybe in the long term, also get into financial, relationships with the producer, which kind of guarantees your supply. This is a model we call L-commerce, right? So
Right.
I think as this progresses, the cost of technology will come down. All of this is still not in place. We are still in the early days of the network. We're still in beta, as you know, in Bangalore. Over time, the number of technology providers on the network will bring down the cost of technology. And then the common way of marketing this network, if we are able to adopt, then it brings down the cost of marketing as well. When it comes to service, believe that the local digital entrepreneur because he's an entrepreneur, right? Will provide a better quality service because it's going to be customized to the segment that entrepreneur is serving. So putting this all together, we believe the level playing field is going to get created, and it's going to be a better way of better, more sustainable way of conducting commerce through this win-win kind of network. Right?
Got it. Got it. This is really, encouraging to know how you've kept the smallest seller. I mean, you as in eSamudaay as well as ONDC and all the innovations that's coming out in this space. My last question to you, Anup, is, there's a lot of pilot testing going on, and eSamudaay has been in this business for a very long time. We've also been hearing about onboarding of merchants to seller applications. Any emergent findings from ongoing pilot or from your, experience at eSamudaay that you would like to share with us? That's interesting to know and tells us a little bit about how merchants are perceiving this entire, coming on to the app and using the app for their own good.
So what I mentioned earlier, which is what can happen for the sellers. Even 10% of this, when you talk to them about, they're very very keen to join the network of this nature because sellers, as we know, across India have been facing dwindling revenues, especially post COVID, and post COVID has kind of made it even more starker. So there is a lot of keenness and interest to be able to join a network like this. So onboarding sellers is not a challenge, right? Now, yeah, there are operational issues of managing lakhs and lakhs of sellers, KYCs, good behavior and all of that, which we'll get to, right? But getting a seller to connect himself to the network is not a challenge. The challenge obviously is in growing these growing revenues for the seller, which is where I think a little bit of patience and hard work will be needed, because we are thinking about a completely new, revitalized economic system. It is like grassroots, ground up economic system, organized locally and so on, which sounds good, but it takes some effort. And we've got models running which shows that it takes a few months before activities start and people to get to start to come together, right? So what I think needs to happen is um, the value creation that we are talking about, that the data value creation that we are talking about, tokenization and all of that. If we are able to communicate this well, and if we can get buyers to be able to, use these services, because this is like them choosing to go with the producers,
Yeah.
and that comes back to the original question that you asked, right? Digital Swaraj, right? What does it mean? I mean, how does this, how do you as a buyer or a participant in this network benefit as well? I mean, those are things that we will get past. So as of now, what is really needed, Monami, is the concept is in place, models are in place, beta testing of ONDC is done, a rollout plan is in place. But what is needed is high fidelity investment flows. I mean, investment flows are not as fickle and decided like the VC funds or the or so on. This is something that is high fidelity, where you truly believe in the investment that you're making, and you're putting skin in the game along with the money, and that potentially triggering high velocity transaction flows in the local area. And that's when I think this small business network, this e-commerce network can start to become viable.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, we are at that point where that fast forward is starting to happen. We are sort of thinking about sort of a community life in the digital age, and that's something that in my travels across the world, that's something that I think most societies are starting to crave, right? I mean, how do we back that community life, make it less transactional, make it more vibrant, family oriented, and all of that, which I think this is what eSamudaay stands for. And on the open network, these kind of ideas are possible to blossom.
Right, right. This is very encouraging to know. I mean, at the time at which we are having this conversation, this is probably going to be one of the first, conversations which we can refer back to maybe a year after and see how things have panned out over 1 year, because the speed is really catching up in terms of, kind of ONDC and everything attached to it. This brings us to the end of this episode of Idea Series. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, Anup. Uh, India is definitely on its path to reinventing e-commerce, and this time the benefit could be more equitably distributed, particularly among the small traders and merchants, as you explained to us. eSamudaay has been definitely the front runner in the journey of decentralized e-commerce, and now with the advent of ONDC, we may get to witness the true democratization of digital marketplaces. We wish you all the best in your future plans, and it was great chatting with you.
I
Thank
just want to add one last thing, Murami. India is reinventing digital, full stop. I mean, because I think this Indian way, I mean, is something that is going to start catching the fancy of the West as well, as we all search for answers to climate change and some of the major, civilizational challenges that lie ahead. We need to come together as communities and then collaborate as a global community of humans trying to, make a better life on this planet, right?
Definitely, Anup. It'll be really something to witness as the years go by. Thanks
Thanks
so much, Anup.
Manami.
Thanks.